Welcome to the GanjaActivist.com podcast series, formerly known as Cannabis and Coffee Conversations. In this week's episode, we sit with Shanika Roberts-Odle, the acting CEO of the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority. They recently wrapped up a very successful first staging of the BajCan MedCon conference in Bridgetown, Barbados. We spoke with her about the event, the signing of the MOU between Caribbean states for the Caribbean Cannabis Forum, and we got into what's next for the development of a viable medicinal cannabis industry on the island. Bye. Too damn fast. Welcome to the GanjaActivist.com podcast series, formerly known as Cannabis and Coffee Conversations. In this week's episode, we sit with Shanika Roberts-Odle, the acting CEO of the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority. They recently wrapped up a very successful first staging of the BajCan MedCon Cannabis Conference in Bridgetown, Barbados. We spoke to her about the event, the signing of the MOU between Caribbean states for the Caribbean Cannabis Forum, and we got into what's next for the development of a viable medicinal cannabis industry on the island. I can edit that. Let's see. Fuck, it gets hot so quick. Oh. Right on. Well, let's just jump in. So you staged the first annual BajCan conference, just a little bit over 2 weeks ago, I believe it was. How did it go? How was the attendance? How was the participation? I know that you're offering free registration. I'm sure that's to get some of the local community involved and so on. But how did it go?
It went amazing. I think we had a really diverse group of people in the room, which was really important for us. We wanted to be able to bring together stakeholders from all the different areas and spectrums. So there was the Rastafari community who came out and supported. I'm tremendously grateful for them. They're also part of a couple of the panels. And Abbott, who would have done the prayer for us as well, out of the Adis Alem grouping of the local Rastafarian community. We would have had traditional growers, non-Rastafarian, who would have also attended. And we were really happy for their support. The business community would have attended, along with the medical community. And a really big appreciation to them for coming out. Some from the psychiatric fraternity, along with some of the other medical fraternities, pharmacists, nurses. And the general public who were very interested. So it was a good time.
Okay, great. Okay, excellent. That sounds great. I did see some of the panels. It did seem quite interesting. How is the business community? How are they responding? Because I do know in Jamaica, it's kind of those who are in and want to be stakeholders, and then there's everyone else is like, I don't get involved in ganja. So what's it like over in Barbados?
I think that's kind of the way it is everywhere.
All right.
One of the things that I'm really, really attached to, which was part of my presentation on the day, was that, generally at this point in time, we've got two sets of tribes in almost every jurisdiction, the free up the weed and the dash away the weed crowd, right? So they generally fall
somewhere in between there, you've got the CBD supporters who are like trying to embrace everything, but they want to say, but it's not really ganja, it's not really. It's like, well, come on, it's the same. Yeah, it's interesting.
It's one of those things. But it's mainly the free up the weed or the dash away the weed crowd. That's the reality. There are those in the middle, but the majority are on the two ends of the spectrum. I think that we had a good kind of conversation. And that was what was really important to me. The business community, I think, kind of understood where we were coming from, because what was also important for us to have a frank discussion. I think a lot of times people move into the cannabis space, the medicinal cannabis space, very much with green gold in their eyes, without a full understanding of the kind of issues that this particular industry faces. And so we wanted to have that fuller discussion with everyone, quite frankly, about the issues we face on the banking end of spectrum, about the issues that we face as it relates to insurance. And we didn't want to just have that in our own little silos. So we brought those from the insurance community and those who would have also been there from the banking community to kind of just explain where the issues lie, and to have what I think was a fair discourse about the issues. and representing these various spectrums. For instance, in the banking community, one of the representatives there was very adamant about the difficulties that they face with their correspondent bankings, and I was rather adamant to the effect of, yeah, but if there was a will, there was a way, and the issue that is presented is your lack of will to engage. So I think we had a frank discourse, which was what
I mean,
was that.
how that's interesting. I literally just about to ask about that. I mean, given that it's not even to say recreational, which is a little bit freer than medicinal, but the mere fact that it's a regulated legal medicinal industry, they're still unwilling to participate. I mean, it's technically legal in your jurisdiction, so it's
Yeah, and as I said, it's for me, in being respectful of the issues that they put on the table, it is still a matter of willingness for me. Because one of the blessings is we also had, and I just want to take the opportunity to say, it's really great support from the other regulatory heads. All of them were here in Barbados with me, and I want to thank them all so much. But what was really, really critical is that St. Vincent's found a way around it, right? Which means, and St. Vincent has some of the same correspondent banking relationships, which means it's possible, right? And St. Vincent is very generous. They've shared their framework with us, which we have shared with our banking institutions to kind of go, hey, there is a possibility of doing this. Here is a successful case in which this has been done. And so it was also really important to have St. Vincent here because they were able to attest to the fact that they do have a banking solution and they do have the capability to do it. But you know what, even in being respectful of all the things that they're saying, I'm still really glad that we had the discourse, which allowed me to bring money to the table. I mean, we signed a number of MOUs at the conference itself, but M-Money, which is a digital wallet system, so kind of like a digital banking system, who has been willing to kind of step to the fray and say, well, let's see if we can work on something together that will solve the issue, at least of the local movement of funds. But that doesn't solve the international movement of funds. As much as I would like to, I don't have a bank on the horizon to be able to do that. But and money coming on board at least gives us hope to be able to solve the local movement of funds, which is also very, very important.
How involved would M-Money get? Because I do know that even people who work in a dispensary or work in the industry in Jamaica, they have issues because they can't really bank their salaries, so they can't even access mortgages and so on. Is that going to be something that M-Money is going to try to kind of fill in that void within the progress people need to make within society?
Well, I can't really speak to whatever advancements could be possible. What I can speak to is at least on the case of being able to receive your salary, and being able to like move your funding around. We should be able to use M-Money to be able to do that and to facilitate that. Because generally here, if you advise them that you are working for a cannabis organization, they may not even want to give you a bank account to begin with. Right? If you already have a bank account, it's fine. I mean, I already have bank accounts. I already have mortgages. And to date, let me knock on some wood. They've not shut down my account.
I was going to say, because they shut down the CLA in Jamaica. They shut down one of their bank accounts at some point. I think they fixed it, but I do know that they did get shut down.
They've never given us an account. They've been very clear. They've never given.
They're not even going to give you all. Okay. So how do you collect your licensing fees and how does that?
Because they're not going to shut down the government's accounts. So the government has an online platform. Called Easy Pay. And so we have a section on that platform where people go through and they pay for their license. And the bank is well aware of that. The government is well aware of that. So I mean, unless the banks are prepared to shut down the government's accounts, I don't think they would. But that is the format in which we have progressed through. But what I will say for them is that, it is not to say that the banks are not correct in that they will have to, kind of talk it out with their correspondent banking. Let me say when, because I fully believe they will have to come to the table at some point in time. When they do come to the table, that will be the discussion that they will need to have.
Right on. All right, so tell me about this MOU. I've been reading about it. It sounds really interesting. I think it's definitely the direction that the Caribbean needs to go. How many islands were signed on? How many have yet to sign? How many signed in Barbados? I'm sure there are a couple more signatures added in Barbados. And where is
Oh,
they going?
the Caribbean Cannabis Forum. Yeah. So that would have started in St. Lucia.
Right, say right. Okay.
By my good friend Dylan Norbert Inglis. He
Yeah.
is senior legal counsel in the Ministry of Commerce. And he's been really handling along with the minister who is phenomenal. I love her. They've been moving St. Lucia's position as it relates to medicinal cannabis industry into the market. And so through a lot of discussions, a lot of the work that has gone into the reach out, the connection between the Caribbean islands has been driven out from the CEOs of the various cannabis authorities.
Okay.
Heavy congratulation for that goes to Mr. Regis Burton. He's
Yeah.
CEO of Antigua. And Regis and St. Vincent, Dr. Thompson and Mr. Terrell Matt from St.
That's
Vincent,
right.
CEO and COO, they've been very heavily engaged in kind of helping everyone along this particular kind of path and knitting everyone together. So in St. Lucia, earlier this year, around March, St. Lucia would have signed, St. Vincent and the Grenadines would have signed, and St. Kitts would have signed. Here in Barbados, Antigua would have signed
Okay.
on,
All
as
right.
well as we in Barbados would have signed on. So I think the only ones that haven't signed on as of yet would be Jamaica.
Right.
And I believe Grenada is now moving towards their legislative path. So we'll see how that kinds of goes. But it's been really critical in terms of helping everybody see. It's difficult sometimes fighting a good fight when you think you're fighting alone.
Right.
And so it's important to see that you're not fighting alone.
Alone,
Right.
right on. Yeah.
Everybody has some of the same kind of fights, some of the same kind of battles, and can kind of show you, hey, here's how you kind of short circuit this.
Right.
Here's how you skip ahead, couple past. Here's some of the mistakes that we've made. Maybe try not to make these same ones. And it's been really helpful. I think on the whole, the Caribbean Cannabis Forum is about that, but it's also about moving the conversation forward. The reality is, as Caribbean islands, we are critically aware of the fact that a lot of the things that we must abide by in the wider world are not created by us,
Right,
and rules
true.
that are not created for us.
Right.
And they happen somewhere in Brussels, at
Geneva,
some
yeah.
conference table, right, where people have had a conversation and that has not looked at the unique complexities of who we are.
Right,
And how
absolutely.
we relate to it. And particularly in terms of this particular plant,
Industry, exactly right, absolutely.
And a point that was made to me, and I fall in love with it, and I reiterate it forever, is that the Caribbean has one of the most unique relationships to cannabis compared to anywhere else in the world. Cultures completely based off
Absolutely.
of cannabis in terms of in certain aspects. And so it's really important and critical that we start to engage with these groups as it relates to, hi, I understand where you're coming from, but
right,
to put our position on the table. And as each of us has our own small, I think Jamaica CLA has the biggest staff complement at this point in time, Jamaica, and I think maybe St. Vincent, but most of us don't have a huge staff complement. We can't be in Brussels when the conversations are being had. There may be one of us from each one of us out of the entirety of the Caribbean who is there. And so by creating a forum and creating a grouping, wherever you are, we are.
You can speak kind of as a voice, as a singular voice type of situation. But so what is the MOU? Well, that's understood to have the conversation going within the Caribbean, but is it looking to what's it looking to as far as in terms of trade, in terms of sharing assets? I mean, because I've always made statements that islands like Trinidad and Tobago if they get their act together. Because of the low cost of energy, it would be perfect for processing and packaging and those kind of operations. While Jamaica and others would be much more conducive for growing and so on. So we have these like bilateral treaties or partnerships where we're producing, at least for the Caribbean. And what about inter-island trade? That's always a huge thing. I was just reading a thing about the U.S. Virgin Islands that are very siloed. And anyway, so just what's the MOU doing in terms of trade?
What I always say, and my background is international trade. So what I always say is an MOU is a declaration of intent, and intent, and MOA is how do we get on the road.
Right.
And I think that's the next step in terms of, okay, so we've declared our intent to work together. We've already been working together, truthfully. But in real practical terms, what does that mean on an industry basis?
Right.
And I think that's where we go next steps. And that involves not just the CEOs, but also involves our ministers, that also involves our government. Because, you can only sign, you can sign to a certain point, but sometimes, when it comes to those bigger aspects, you need the signature that really carries the weight sometimes.
No,
and so we'll be working on the MOA in terms of what does that really mean? Do we need to look at an interstate, which kind of allows us to go around the established rules on an international basis and to form our interconnected relationships as it relates to cannabis and cannabis trade. Right?
I'm sure within medicinal cannabis, recreational might be a little bit more tricky, but recreational cannabis, it technically is legal at the UN level. It's just not really practiced because of enforcement of US laws, quite frankly. So technically it could be very legal and feasible.
Well, one of those things that we say is that there is no law higher than states. So each individual state, it's still very much illegal. So that is where that stands. So we're definitely medicinal at this point in time, but we are the Caribbean Cannabis Forum with a vision to the realities that as things have evolved, possibly in the future, so too may the position of various Caribbean countries. And so we've decided to be the Caribbean Cannabis Forum to be able to address those things.
All right. You have my full support for that. That's something that I believe very strongly in. If any industry, quite frankly, in the Caribbean is to be successful, you're going to have to become one Caribbean. I mean, it's just, we've been talking about it for decades. There's the 10 minus 1 leaves none, and yada yada. We all know, we know the history behind it, So all right, well, stepping away from the Caribbean, what about the US? What do things? All right, we don't know what the outcome is going to be. Harris says she's going to fully legalize. Trump has merely said he's going to vote yes on Amendment 3 in Florida. But yeah, what do you think the ramifications of the US elections can have? At least with the reasonable discourse on moving the industry forward.
Well, as it relates to the effect that the US elections can have, one of the things about US governance is that I'm very cognizant of the fact that while someone may sit in the White House, it is those who sit in Congress and Senate that
enact laws.
Activate anything. Otherwise, it is only temporary positions that are taken by a president in which he can maneuver around those two bodies. It would take agreement on those two levels to push things forward as it relates to cannabis. And they have had the ability to push that forward for eons.
True.
Right? The SAFE Act has been there. And they have not. And we have to be realistic about the fact that there is an US advantage to not pushing that forward. There is an advantage towards cultivating better industry, cultivating better strains, growing stronger, growing bigger, and allowing those industries to flourish and faster. Well, flourish, let's put it that way. Before you kind of allow the rest of the world to be fully engaged. And we have to be honest about that. And while that may not, giving full acknowledgement that, while that may not be the intention, it is the result. And so all the rest of the Caribbean can do is to continue to push forward, even in our limited ability to do so without the banking situation being solved. Because otherwise we've given up the ghost. Otherwise we've given up the ghost. And that's the reality of the situation. They have spent eons learning, shaping, growing, sometimes from us.
Oh, absolutely. Jamaica played
You
a
know,
huge role in a lot of cultivation facilities across Canada and the US. I mean, that's just a fact.
exactly, exactly. And so when you look at it in its totality, even when you look at Canada now, Canada does not allow for the
Right. I was
importation.
gonna bring that up. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Doesn't allow for the importation into Canada, but it does allow for the exportation of the
Exportation,
final
right.
product out of Canada.
Right.
And it does so rather successfully.
But
And
is
so that
that a law, or is it just kind of an understanding of how of an operational understanding? I mean, if somebody
oh no,
really did
Canada does
push,
not allow. They do not allow for the importation of cannabis into Canada.
but
They
then
do not.
why do people allow them to export? I mean, that should be bilateral and say, look, if we, I guess I did, I know the export to Europe, and a lot of them, like Portugal, don't allow for internal cultivation and stuff, so that kind of solves that problem. But yeah, is there, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'm just, is there more of it? Is there an active push to try to open up the doors in Canada to you know
I think
to
we also
GMP Caribbean products?
I think you also have to look at the reality of the situation. So even in the context of trade, we understand that standards are a thing,
Right.
and they're an important thing. They protect us, they help us, but standards are also used as blockers to trade. Right? So even in the case of a situation in which you are allowed to then export into Canada, you then face all of the standard prohibitions. You must meet X standard, you must meet Y standard. That then takes you down a very particular road as it relates to cultivation, the manner in which you must cultivate, the manner in which you must extract, the manner in which all of these other things must be done. I think that the reality is, even in terms of Barbados, we are attempting to make sure that our standards are good for the health of people.
Right.
But I also think as we talk about medicinal cannabis and then we move the country's mindset to the ability to allow for medicinal use of
Right.
cannabis, that is framed in a very northern context, particularly for Barbados, because we don't allow for the smoking.
Right, I realize that. Yeah, I've seen
Cannabis.
that. Yeah, right.
We don't allow for edibles,
Okay.
right?
Which
We
is
don't allow for the
difficult.
steeping and steaming. So a lot of that speaks towards a very particular frame through which we see cannabis, medicinal cannabis.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the most fair of frames. It really isn't. It isn't the most fair of frames.
Right.
Particularly for those who come to me who've said, I've had to self-medicate for years.
Right,
Because
yeah.
it wasn't. So I'm comfortable with a particular usage format that deals with smoking or that deals with teas.
Right.
And I would like to be able to continue to use that format. Right. And so but to be fair, this is a conversation we're having with our medical community, because you have to remember that the medical community is taught to think of things in very particular ways.
Right.
And so they are willing to trust in what they believe has been scientifically researched. So the products that they're willing to oftentimes prescribe to people are products they can see has gone through an FDA.
Right. Yeah, the process and it's been tested and trialed and and all that good stuff.
Exactly. And so you are oftentimes in this particular framework dealing with dispelling myths, dispelling notions, but you're dealing with a particular mindset that has been taught and ingested, and in some cases proven tried and true.
Well, in the medical community, this is why, I mean, the medical community I was just saying that that's something that we do talk about a lot, and that it's just because of traditional medicine, because cannabis doesn't factor into traditional medicine at all. Not even the endocannabinoid system, which is just an important regulatory system in the human body, which to me is important. So we do write about that quite a bit. But I mean, are these messages getting across to the medical community?
I will tell you it has. Where we were when we started this battle to where we are now is almost day and night. As I said, there were a lot of the medical community came. I believe the head of the psychiatric hospital was there. A lot of prominent persons from the QH were there, and we were able to through not just the presentations that were given, the actual data that was presented, but also some of the facts, talk about the endocannabinoid system, talk about the issues that are being faced, talk about the fact that this medicine is healing people.
Absolutely.
And to have persons who were actually there. So we would have had Dr. Annabelle Morgan Manilow, who would have used cannabis to heal her son, who would have lost a significant percentage of his brain matter.
Wow. Okay.
And so she would have been able to be there. And she herself is a doctor and a scientist who was able to walk through the science, walk through the data as it relates to her son's particular case, but also give a very powerful personal case, which was important.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that.
Dr. Thompson would have been able to, speak to his position, to his revelation as it relates to coming from someone who was very anti-cannabis,
right,
someone who's very pro-cannabis and has the data to be able to back up what it is he's saying. We would have also had some actual doctors, Dr. Nichols, who is a Barbadian doctor who currently practices and has practiced, I believe, for the past 10 plus years in Bahamas, to, show the data on what she has been able to do with her patients and prescribe them. And I think we do have a lot of that here. And, I know that there are those who feel as though we were not moved as quickly as we should, but we've not opened and done as much as we could. But I do believe that we have been going the best that we could for Barbadian society. And I believe that by going the method that we have gone, we've been able to provide doctors with the space that they're comfortable with to see the results. There's actually a doctor here who's been prescribing CBD products for her dementia patients. And she swears by the fact that this has completely changed how they're been able to operate. They've had less episodes, less of the walking away scenario. They're calmer, and she is one of those who was very anti. And had we gone the way that some people would have gone, she wouldn't have been willing to even open her eyes to attempt. Right. And so it is now easier for us to say, okay, we've done work that is necessary for you to see. Now I need you to see a little bit more. I need you to see a little bit more in terms of the other kinds of forms and formats that are necessary.
Okay. No, I do believe that getting the medical practitioners, the medical community on board, especially in like you say, Barbados, in a more conservative island like Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, I think that's going to be necessary as well. Because it's these conversations need to be had. I think to really penetrate, that's going to be the pathway. So what about the two more questions? What about Sacramento? How is that rolling out in Barbados?
Sacramento doesn't fall under me.
Okay.
That falls under the Attorney General's office.
Okay.
I think they were making some adjustments. I know that the Rastafari community has expressed some discontent with some of the particulars in how that particular legislation operates. But I can't give you a definitive conversation about Sacramento. That's not really been my area. And I, as people will tell you, I try very hard to put over two things whenever I speak to people. One, I deal with medicinal, not Sacramento, not recreational. And two, I am a regulator, which means I deal with licenses, compliance, and education, and that's it.
All right, no, fair enough. That's interesting that it has been separated. I think a lot of the other entities have not separated it. And that has created, a lot of the conflicts. I mean, like these guys do it, they're allowed to sell and it's not that we can't. It's become an issue. Antigua has taken a slightly different approach to that. But again, all the islands are going to be different.
But what I think that it's been a benefit in some islands. As you said, Antigua has been able to kind of meld the road between the two and do something that I think that their Rastafari community has been very, very pleased with. It's been a model. It's been one of those things that we've been really happy to kind of see. And so we've been taking notes. Our visit to Antigua was really, really enlightening. So we've been taking notes on how they have kind of, under the leadership of Mr. Regis Burton, meld their community and kind of work out some kinks. So it's been interesting to see.
All right. What's next? I mean, what's next on your agenda? Well, first of all, are you going to be in St. Vincent for cannabis?
I'll be in St. Vincent, of course, of course.
Okay.
I could not
Okay.
let that pass.
All right.
I
We're
think all of us are going to be.
trying as well to get there again. We don't want to miss, these major events in the Caribbean.
I'm super excited about it. This is something really, really innovative for the Caribbean. Definitely different. I mean,
Right.
there's
Right.
always been cannabis at concerts, but
Right.
to have an authority do a medicinal authority do a conference on a conference and
Incorporating.
a concert on this scale at this level, it's really important. And I think St. Vincent has been really, really a good barometer in terms of a Caribbean country that has embraced all the other Caribbean countries coming into the industry,
Right.
a country that has taken a serious but relaxed position when
Right.
it comes to cannabis, and one that continues to kind of push forward on this particular belt. And each of our islands have dealt with this in completely different ways. St. Lucia is going the route of doing a substances authority, which I think is really innovative, uh, as to how they go about their industry, because they're not just doing a cannabis industry. Their substances authority is going to deal with radioactive materials, dealing with alcohol, dealing with fireworks and those kinds of things. It's really, really a really good position to take. I've got my eye on that, so to
Okay.
speak.
All right. Right on. I'll have to look at that
But it also
further. Right
then
on.
allows them to move into other areas. You know, we're having that conversation in Caribbean about mushrooms.
Right. Right on. Yeah.
And about those other things that are coming through the pipeline. And I think that Barbados has always been one of those Caribbean countries, particularly coming through the pipeline, that has been innovative. We've been ahead of a lot of other countries as it
Right.
relates to tackling issues and really just putting a position and a stance on things and embracing or deciding on how we're going to deal with things in advance. And I think the reality is that for most countries, as time goes along and your bureaucracy becomes more mature, you tend to slow down on how willing you are to embrace new things and deal
Right.
with new
Because
concepts.
there's more work, basically. Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so I believe that right now Barbados is in a mode of making a change as it relates to making a more nimble bureaucracy, if
Right.
that
Right
makes
on.
more
Yeah.
sense.
Okay. No,
And
absolutely.
trying to get ahead of where the world is, particularly on things like climate change, on things like a new financing model for small and developing countries. But also, I think we also need to take a look at how we're going to be more innovative about dealing with these things coming down the pipeline, because our population, particularly, it's a natural thing. We watch so much TV, we are so exposed to the globe through the internet, that we become global people. And our prime minister is advising us, she wants us to become global citizens, which is a different kind of connotation, because it means you have to be active and engaged.
Involved.
And
Right. Exactly. Right on. Yeah.
exactly. And I think it is important that as we encourage people to be global citizens, we are putting things in place to allow them to be so, even in the case of substances.
Okay. All right. No, I think it's good. I think it's good what you guys are doing. So yeah. So what's next for Barbados, for the BMCLA? What's on your agenda now for 2025, and what can we expect for BajCan 2025? Because it's I mean.
Okay. Well, there won't be a BajCan 2025. I
Okay.
think
Really. Okay.
we're gonna do that in like an every 3-year kind of perspective.
Okay. Okay.
At least that's where I am right now. You'll have to forgive me.
Might get excited, right? You might get
In
excited
the immediate aftermath.
Right.
And it was really heartwarming to hear how many persons internationally and regionally and locally really enjoyed the conference, really thought it was innovative, really thought it kind of hit all the marks that it needed to hit.
Right. Well,
But it was
how many attendees did you guys have? Like, about how many people?
we had well, it depends on how you break it down, because we would have had day 1, day 2, and the Green Gala. So I
Right,
think
okay.
over those 3 events, if you separate them, I think we're 300 people each day
Right on. Okay.
in the room in of itself.
Right.
We had, due to weather issues and people, taking off on their flights right after the conference, we had less at the actual Green Gala,
Green,
which
right.
would have occurred at the Prime Minister's residence, Ilara Court,
Okay.
which was wonderful. I
I'm
had a
sure. I'm
rocking
sure.
good time.
Right.
I think everybody had a rocking good time. But I think we had that most 600. I
Right.
mean,
Okay.
in total, but some of those would have been repeat persons from the
Right on.
So I
Oh,
think
that's
I
reasonable. That's
personally,
reasonable.
yeah, we had a good time. Because as it would have been free, and I understood that people were devoting their time, and we fed everyone.
Right.
And we had good sponsorship. Brighton Stokes would have been sponsors. Grow IQ would have been one of our sponsors. We had good hotel sponsors here, Little Good Harbor, the Rockley, the Oceans 2. Some of our licensees would have also sponsored Amalgamated. And we also had some of the regional growers here, and they would have displayed their products. So we would have had, out of Antigua, we had Grow Antigua and Pineapple
Right on.
Road,
Yeah, they told me. Yeah.
right? So they came in and they were able to display their products. We were able to give them temporary license to bring in some of their products
Okay, right
to
on.
show, which I assure you shook up customs and immigration a little bit.
That should have been fun. I should have. We're supposed to
You know,
laugh now. What are you talking about? It's like that's
it
right.
was a little bit interesting. It was a
Yeah.
little bit interesting, but
Right.
everything came through smoothly
Okay, that's
for the
good.
most part, and
Right.
everybody got in. And out of St. Vincent, we would have had Summers, which
Right
is
on.
Canna SVG,
Yeah.
and goodness. And Medicinal, CCC
Medicinal.
Medicinal,
Yeah.
who would have brought in their products as well. And that was really critical
Yeah.
as well, to kind of show people what kind of products they are
Different
available.
form factors and so on. That it's not just a
Exactly.
green flower, which is important. I mean, of course I'm a flower consumer, but it's not my parents won't be, but if it's in a pill form, if it's a cream, it's the ointment, this and that, tinctures, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm a supportive of edibles. I don't know why that's not picking up in the region. I'm gonna have to continue talking about it because that is stifling a significant portion of the industry.
I can agree with you that I think edibles is a really important aspect that is being kind of left on the table. But I think there's also a conversation that we had to be had about the safety of how people
Right, for
produce
sure.
edibles.
Absolutely.
And I think that's part of the problem that we're having. And it's also a miscategorization of what is happening that also affects society's acceptance of these kinds of forms. So in situations in which people are not understanding that if you're going to produce an edible, then it has to have in the same amount each time.
Yeah,
So if
absolutely.
I buy an edible from Joe has 3 grams. I buy an edible from Mark has 1 gram. And I feel as though, oh my God, I'm overdosing, not realizing that I'm not overdosing. I've just taken more
A
than I
different, yeah.
normally take
Right, yeah.
because there is no kind of standardization.
Okay, correct.
And that then makes doctors uncomfortable
Right.
with a prescription of those kinds of things because of a lack of an understanding. And then even for those who make the edibles, sometimes people aren't quite understanding that everything you do in cooking is a chemical process.
Right.
And so you adding water is a chemical process. You putting it in the oven, you're adding heat. It's a chemical process. Right. It's changing the nature of the product. Exactly. And so what sometimes happens is those taking edibles illegally in the market, when they do have a situation in which they're a little too high, which they did not expect to be, they will run to the medical clinics, and then the doctors will categorize that as an overdose.
Right.
Not understanding it's not really an overdose situation.
Right. It's overstimulation. Really,
indeed.
What really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Indeed, they aren't about to die. They just may feel like that.
Right.
And so sometimes it then creates a problem for us who are trying to advocate for the fact that there's a safe, sensible way to be able to do this. And it kind of just sets us back. Even in a conversation with someone who may be a bit more pro. And so it's one of those things that we have to continue to take the battle, so to speak, and to continue to have those conversations that there is a safe and efficacious way for this to be done. This isn't quite what you may think it is.
Right.
And then people also have to be honest, right? And I think that that's part of the problem that happens. And I was having this conversation with some of the doctors who may have seen people who are having episodes from cannabis. And I'm like, so the problem is that if you have a quiet conversation with that particular patient, they'll tell you, yeah, I smoke cannabis and something else.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily the cannabis that created it.
Yeah.
It's the cannabis plus. And so the percentage of persons, there are a percentage of persons who will have a psychotropic episode from cannabis.
Right. That does happen, yeah. It is,
yeah, and
minor,
that's the
but it
nature of
does
their
happen, yeah.
Yeah, and that's their chemical makeup.
Yeah, exactly.
They should not be using cannabis.
Right.
But most of the time, what you're seeing isn't the effect of cannabis alone. It's cannabis and cocaine. It's cannabis dipped in formaldehyde. It's cannabis.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And so because people are sometimes unwilling to have those conversations when they do trip about what they've done, they will admit to the cannabis, right? They'll say, yeah,
that's the lighter one. That's cool. Yeah.
But they're not going to admit, well, cannabis and some cocaine, cannabis and some heroin. They're not going to say those things. And so cannabis gets the rap and has gotten the rap for a great number of years. And so I understand the reluctance among the psychiatric community because they're working based on the data that they have.
That they receive, absolutely.
Some skewed information. But as I said, the only way to combat that is to continue the educational conversation. Absolutely. It's to spend the money to have a conference. And as I said previously, we don't currently have any working farms. So I know that there will be a conversation from the opposition in the country, this money that you spend and you don't have any cannabis farms. And it's like, these things will not come about if you allow the miseducation to stand.
Right.
And if the miseducation has gone on for 50 years, you cannot possibly think it's just going to flow.
Change in 2 days. No, absolutely.
And so the reality is we have to spend the money and the time re-educating people, as I said, I think during the conference, and it's a big thing for me, providing information of what the context of education is to allow misinformation, right? Because you can get information anywhere, but if it's not contextualized, like education,
it's not accurate, right? Yeah.
You understand? Because I can say, well, cannabis can cause a psychotropic episode in people. Right? That's information.
Right. Yeah.
It's not contextualized.
Saying exactly say what is the
percentage of that? What are the circumstances? What are
the symptoms of it and how long do they last? And are they how debilitating? I mean, are you just gonna sleep couple extra hours or it's like what's really gonna it's no absolutely. What is the opposition saying? I mean, are they against the industry? Are they for the industry? Or you think they're just gonna argue against the rollout of the industry? How is that gonna play out?
There are things at which in my current circumstance, which is no longer a senator, I find it best to say this. I would hope that everyone is interested and invested in the movement for Barbadians to be engaged in any new industry. We can have a existential conversation about the rollout. We can have a conversation about the regulations, pro or against the regulations as they stand.
Right.
What I would hope is that everyone is understanding of the hard work that has been put in by the people on my team, to work within the context we've been given and to continue to push for educational reform and to continue to do our hard jobs to put things in place. But it is a business at the end of the day. And business people will take their decisions based on their own particular positions. And so in anything, we continue to make recommendations for adjustments and change, and things will continue to adjust as we roll on. I think one of the biggest problems that we have is that people have sometimes the position that if you didn't get it right or perfect the first time, throw it
Did it
away
wrong. Right,
and
right,
start
right.
over. And I think politically that has been the method for many people when it comes to throwing out the baby with the bathwater. And I just thank goodness that the current administration, the Mayor Motley administration, has been one of, no, let's adjust the temperature. You know, let's make some changes. Let's see how we can create a more stimulating environment. But we will not be throwing out the baby with any bathwater. We will continue to make adjustments as we move on. And so that is all I'm going to say with regard to that.
Okay. All right. No, very enough. Very enough. Very enough. All right. Cool. So how many licenses? There's 6 licensees and on the 6 licenses. Not, but that's split between 2 or 3 different licensees, right, or something like that.
Right. So what I say is we have 11 approved applicants with 33 licenses. That includes the University of the West Indies Gayfield campus, who we have under an MOU. They have a research and development license, and they have a research and development lab. We are hopeful. We are hopeful that there will be, excuse me, apologies. There will be at least one lab.
Right on.
By Christmas. One, not lab, one cultivation facility by Christmas.
Okay, all right.
Just they're waiting on some approvals, other governmental approvals that have nothing to do with
like
us.
agriculture,
but we're helping them
through
security,
the process. I guess. Okay.
Well, you know, it's one of those situations in which these things aren't just based on us. We're part of, you know, there's town and country planning approvals.
Yeah,
there
absolutely. Yeah.
Other areas and stuff like that. So we're helping them through the process as it relates to that. The conference as a whole ticked a lot of our boxes in terms of what we were trying to achieve. I don't think there's a single thing we were trying to achieve that we didn't. It did stimulate some of our licensees who were holding strain a little bit to see where things were going, to kind of come forward and say, you know what, I'm gonna pay for my license. Let's go ahead and get this going. I see the possibilities. Let's move on. So I'm ecstatic with that one.
No, right on. Yeah.
And so we're looking to see. There's been interest from several areas as it relates to Barbados's market. Our friends in St. Vincent like to often say that Barbados has a consumer market that is unmatched in some areas of the Caribbean. I deal only with the medicinal.
What's your take on that? I know I've had some fun about it.
I deal only with the medicinal end of it.
I'll leave it at that.
But I do know that there are people who have been self-medicating for a very long time, and who are tired of having to kind of hide.
No, it's not even just hiding. It's hiding and it's not being able to get accurate. I mean, even here, it's like you don't know what you're picking up every time you go to get it. You know, I was quite disappointed yesterday. Like, what the hell is this? You know, it's like in this day and age, yeah, it's not.
Yeah, and that's important. And I think that sometimes as we move on, and I think when we come to the point where we allow for smoking and vaping, that is going to be a key part of the messaging that we put out, which is more about how well do you trust your dealer? And that's a conversation you have to have, because right now you're trusting them with your life.
Right. No, it's yeah, you're not, yeah. I mean, it's just kind of through habit. You're like, no, it's normal. I've done it before. It's like, yeah, but you don't know when it's gonna be just that wrong batcher because he doesn't know. You know what I mean? That's the problem right there. You know what I mean?
Exactly. He doesn't know what he's giving you either. You don't know where that's come from. Right. And so I think that is part of the market, particularly in St. Vincent and in Jamaica, which I think has been also critical for persons in terms of moving to something that's safe. And safety is an important thing. And I think for so long, and I speak only for those who've had to self-medicate, because that is the only part that I deal with. People have had to suspend safety in favor of just feeling better. And so we have to kind of look at that. But we also have to kind of take a healthy approach to what we're doing, and the idea that anything can be abused, including cannabis. And even as we encourage people to take the legal route, to take the medicinal route, we also have to continue to work with our NCSAs, our councils on substance abuse. We have to continue to try to keep the kids away from it.
Definitely.
We also have to try to redirect persons who have, gone too far.
Right.
and
No,
where
absolutely. Again,
those different.
there will be abusive situations. They do have that level of addictive personalities, and these need to be dealt with. Some types of cannabis consumption could probably help with addiction. Actually, it does with opioid addiction in the U.S. So, I mean, it's a bizarre little balance. But again, that comes down to education and proper use. I mean, quite frankly, if you have some propensities, but cannabis helps in another way, maybe a pill form would be more appropriate. You know, some oil or something instead of just smoking a split.
Yeah,
All these things make a difference. All these
most
things
definitely.
make a difference. Sounds good. So yeah, so I didn't get you. We kind of jumped into will be there be another BajCan before saying so what's next for the BMC? Like what is next
Right.
for you guys?
So next at this point in time, is that we made a couple of recommendations. So we're waiting to hear back on those. As long as those get approved, those should be some really good announcements to be able to come forward. We're going to be working, as we indicated, with M Money on getting that particular end of things arranged and sorted so that people can have local access to be able to move their funds within the cannabis industry. Next year, we've got our anniversary celebrations in January. And it's more work. It's more work. We've got some really, really exciting things coming. We're gonna be trying to tackle, we have a plan in place. As long as it is approved, we will be tackling the tourist end of things.
Right.
How do they make access to medicinal cannabis products when they get to Barbados? Because Barbados is one of those places where you can't bring a
Medical
prescription from somewhere else
Okay,
and just get it filled here. That
Okay.
we don't do that.
Right.
So you have to then see a doctor here, which then presents issues for anybody who's on a cruise ship, on a one-day tour, those kinds of things. So we're looking to figure out how do we tackle that.
Well, there's telehealth. I mean, that's what everyone else is doing. People complain, but that's.
So we'll once we have approvals, we'll be able to make some announcements in those areas. And we're also tackling some of the bigger concerns that people have kind of put out as it relates to smaller players in the industry.
Right. Yeah.
We've done a lot to facilitate them, but I think we're going to be digging a bit more. Once those we'll be digging a bit more and creating an avenue that is solely for them. And that is something I'm really, really happy about. But again, once it's approved, we should be able to make those announcements. But yeah, we've spent this year patient and doctor guidelines. Right. We've been putting that out. I think we put 10,000 out in the newspapers to the general public for them to have. And we did that probably a month ago. So we'll be doing some more of that kind of immediate getting information out to people. Right. Yeah.
Sounds good. I was just gonna no, all right, that sounds really interesting. We'll definitely be here to follow. Definitely want to follow with you as well to see how things are rolling out. Please, when you're making these announcements, you know that we are media, so please do share them with us. And I'm gonna send you our rate sheet again because I would still love to have a Bajan entity advertising in the magazine. So we can actually get it out into people's, and I think that we want to go to print this time around so we can get it into gonna be put it in hotel rooms, probably the hotels in Barbados. So the same ones that you mentioned who are kind of supporting you guys, we're gonna be reaching out to about doing a little partnerships with them and stuff as well. So we have it there because again the education needs to get out to people. The internet is too much information is too easily accessible, and a lot of the information is wrong. So you want to give them the proper stuff. At least to know there's a place you can go, proper safe information for if you're into business, if you're into consumption, if you're a patient, if you're a medical professional, if you're government aspiring senator, or somebody who wants to get involved and do something. You can have that information accessible to you. Through ganjactivist.com. It should be there. Yeah, that's our intention. Oh yeah. So no, I say thank you for your time. This has been fun. I'm really happy to hear where things are going. Well, that's what I was about to ask. What about processing facilities, like for processing oils and medicinal products and so on? Do you have these? How's that going with them?
We've approved, I believe, 4 of them.
Okay.
In terms of approval. I am, again, it's a business conversation.
Yeah.
So it really is dependent on persons having putting together their funds and getting the actual facilities built. But we've
Right.
approved about 4. There's actually some interest as it relates to some of the other Caribbean countries in terms of building processing facilities here
Right.
and being
Okay.
able to process their materials here. So we're very interested in that and seeing where that can go. You know, Barbados is one of those places where we fully believe in the CSME project. We do.
Right.
But
Right on.
there's always that conversation of making sure that relationships are mutually beneficial.
Absolutely,
And so,
absolutely. And no one's being kind of exploitative or exploited because, you know,
exactly.
their you know, their name is smaller in the cannabis industry or something. No, they have to act like it. I come from Jamaica, man. No, nobody not gonna buy it. Don't come from Jamaica. I understand that. I
Yeah,
understand that.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I think there's the room for partnerships, but it
yeah,
always involves suspending a bit of ego. And I think that that is part of any integration project, the ability to suspend not just ego, but a bit of our nationalistic pride for our regional pride. And I
right,
think that that is something that we have to continue to engender in people.
right, right, right. No, I agree, agreed. We will, yeah, we'll try. Even when I left Jamaica, I had people complaining, "How could you be talking to Barbados and Trinidad? What are you doing? Is he supposed to be, you know, bigging up Jamaica, man? But this is our thing." I'm like, dude, it's a Caribbean thing, you know. But yeah, it's yeah, it's an ongoing conversation, ongoing conversation. But I'm glad that the initiative has been taken. I have been speaking about it. I'm glad that people like St. Lucian so have moved it forward. Dying to see Jamaica come on board and sign, and I'm sure they're going to want to be the last ones just because they're like really bad, you know. But we'll see how that goes. I guess.
That is okay, but I mean, I really want to say shout outs to my girl Farah, Farah
All right.
Blake, the head of Jamaica. She does a really incredible job under some tough circumstances
Yeah.
sometimes. So, you know, I'm really happy, and I think we'll get there. You know, with everything, it is time and willingness.
Right. No, willingness is key. Is, you know, it just takes time to get there, but the willingness is
Yeah.
what pushes you to that point. Uh,
And,
I guess that's it. Any last words?
um, I want to thank you. You know, I know it is sometimes extremely difficult to get a hold of me. But I want to thank you for your willingness to keep at it. Where I can, I promise you, I will wholeheartedly attempt to make the time. But
I appreciate it.
you know that this is a difficult game that we are in. Particularly in the context of who we are individually and together as a Caribbean people. So keep up the fight.
I will try. And I am as long as I can sustain it, I will do so. Let me put it that way.
Indeed.
Right on. All right. Well, thank you again for your time and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the GanjaActivist.com podcast series. Be sure to pick up a copy of the GanjaActivist.com magazine coming out this December in both print and digital.